Fame is a strange and hungry thing. It shines a bright light on you, so bright that everyone can see your face. They know your name, they cheer when you walk by. But fame has a shadow, a long and dark one that stretches out behind you. It holds all the secrets you try to hide, all the quiet fears that creep in when the lights go down. Some people will do anything for that bright light. They will chase it into old, forgotten places. They will make promises they don't understand, ignoring the whispers that warn them to turn back before it's too late. They think the applause will protect them, but it won't. The shadow is always waiting. This is a story about a man who had everything fame could offer. His name was Heath Maxwell and his face was known all over the world. He had won awards that gleamed like gold and his movies made millions of dollars. But he wanted more. He wanted something real, something that the flash of a camera could not capture. He craved the hushed silence of a theater just before the curtain rises, the shared breath of an audience hanging on every word. He didn't know that some stages are built on more than just wood and nails. Some are built on sorrow and secrets, and they demand a price from anyone who dares to stand on them. Heath Maxwell learned this lesson too late. He found a place where the shadows were deeper and older than any he had ever known. He thought he could control them, that his fame was a strong enough shield to keep the darkness at bay. He was wrong. The story of what happened to him is a warning, a tale whispered in the winding streets of New Orleans. It's a reminder that some doors are best left unopened, and some secrets are meant to stay buried. It's about the haunting of a man who wanted one last, perfect performance and got more than he ever bargained for. His story begins with a dream and ends in a nightmare. It's a ghost story, but not just about spirits that linger in dusty corners. It's about the ghost of ambition, the haunting echo of a promise made in the dark. It serves as a chilling testament to the idea that when you seek the spotlight at all costs, you might find yourself standing in a darkness from which there is no escape. The applause will fade, the audience will go home, but the shadows, once invited, will stay with you forever. They will wait patiently for their turn in the spotlight, and their performance is one you will never forget. Heath Maxwell was not just an actor, he was a force of nature. On screen he could be a hero, a villain, or the boy next door. People loved him. They bought magazines just to see his picture and stood in long lines to watch his movies. He had a smile that could light up a room and eyes that seemed to hold a hint of sadness, which only made his fans love him more. He lived in a sprawling mansion in Hollywood, drove expensive cars, and attended the most glamorous parties. From the outside, his life looked perfect. A fairy tale written in glittering lights and red carpets, a story everyone wished they could live. But deep down, Heath was tired. He was tired of the shallow conversations and the endless cycle of publicity. He missed the raw energy of the stage, the place where his career had first begun. He remembered the thrill of performing in front of a live audience, the immediate connection, the feeling of creating something real and fleeting in the shared space of a theater. The movies felt hollow in comparison. He longed for the smell of old velvet curtains and dusty floorboards. He wanted to hear his voice echo in a historic hall, not just from a set of speakers in a multiplex cinema. His passion was the theater, the one place he felt truly alive. He often spoke in interviews about his dream of returning to his roots, of finding a project that would challenge him in a way a blockbuster film never could. He didn't just want to act in a play, he wanted to build a legacy. He imagined finding a forgotten theater, a place with history and soul, and breathing life back into its silent halls. This dream became an obsession, a quiet fire that burned within him, pushing him away from the glitz of Hollywood and towards something much older and more mysterious. He started searching, not for a script, but for a place. His agents and managers thought he was crazy. They told him to stick to what he knew, to the formula that had made him a star, but Heath wouldn't listen. The call of the stage was too strong, a siren song pulling him toward an unknown shore. He didn't know it then, but he was no longer chasing a dream of art and legacy. He was being drawn toward his final act, a performance on a stage that had been waiting for someone just like him for a very, very long time. His search would soon lead him to a city of music and magic, and to a building with a dark and patient heart. Heath's search led him to the humid, vibrant streets of New Orleans. The city was alive with music, history, and stories that clung to the air like the sweet scent of jasmine. It was here that he found it, the Orpheum Mirrorhouse. It stood on a quiet cobblestone side street, tucked away from the boisterous crowds of the French Quarter. The building was a beautiful ruin, its grand facade crumbling and its windows boarded up. A sign, faded and peeling, still hung crookedly above the entrance, a ghost of its former glory. The theater had been closed for over 50 years, abandoned and left to decay. Locals spoke of the place in hushed tones. They said it was cursed, a place of bad luck and sorrow. Stories were told of strange accidents, of ghostly figures seen in the darkened windows, and of a coldness that lingered around its doors even on the hottest summer day. No one dared to buy it, no one dared to even step inside. The Orpheum Mirrorhouse was a scar on the neighborhood, a beautiful building that everyone agreed was best left alone. Its history was a tapestry of tragedy, woven with tales of performers who met untimely ends and audiences who fled in terror. But Heath saw none of that. When he looked at the derelict theater, he saw only potential. He saw the magnificent arch of the proscenium, the elegant curve of the balconies, and the intricate plasterwork hidden beneath layers of dust and grime. He imagined the seats filled with an eager audience, the stage bathed in warm light, and the sound of applause echoing off the walls once more. The stories of hauntings and curses didn't frighten him, they intrigued him. He believed that the theater's dark reputation would only add to the mystique, drawing in crowds who were hungry for a thrill. He was a star, and he believed his light was bright enough to chase away any shadows. Against the advice of everyone he knew, Heath bought the Orpheum Mirrorhouse. He poured millions of his own dollars into its restoration. Determined to make it the most talked-about theater in the country, he hired the best architects and builders, instructing them to preserve the theater's original character while updating it with modern technology. He was not just restoring a building, he was setting a stage. He had a very specific performance in mind, one that would cement his place in theater history. He had found the perfect venue, and now, he just needed the perfect play. Heath didn't want to open his newly restored theater with a well-known classic. He wanted something unique, something that would create a buzz and match the theater's mysterious aura. His research led him to a forgotten manuscript, a play that had been performed only once on the very stage of the Orpheum Mirrorhouse before it was shut down. The play was called The Devil's Bargain. It was a dark, unsettling story about a young artist who makes a pact with a shadowy entity to achieve fame and success. The artist gets everything he desires, but his triumphs are followed by a series of terrible misfortunes, ultimately leading to his tragic demise. The legend surrounding the play was as dark as its plot. It was said that the playwright, a man named Silas Blackwood, had not simply written the story but had lived it. Whispers claimed that Blackwood had dabbled in dark arts, using forbidden rituals to fuel his creativity. The play was rumored to be more than just a work of fiction. It was said to be an actual invocation, a way to summon the very entity described in the script. The original performance in the 1930s had ended in disaster. The lead actor collapsed and died on stage during the final scene, and a fire broke out backstage, causing panic and chaos. After that fateful night, the play was deemed cursed. All known copies of the manuscript were supposedly destroyed, and the story of the Devil's Bargain became a cautionary tale among theater folk. It was a play that should never be spoken of, let alone performed. But Heath had managed to find a copy, hidden away in a dusty archive, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. He saw it not as a curse, but as a masterpiece of suspense. He believed the legend was nothing more than superstition, a story that would make for fantastic publicity for his grand reopening. He announced that The Devil's Bargain would be the inaugural show at the newly restored Orpheum Mirrorhouse. The theater community was shocked. Old-timers in New Orleans warned him, begging him to choose another play. They told him he was playing with fire, awakening something that had been dormant for decades. But Heath was stubborn, his ambition blinding him to the warnings. He was convinced that staging the cursed play in a haunted theater was a stroke of genius. He cast himself in the lead role, the tragic artist who bargains with darkness. He had no idea how closely art was about to imitate life. Rehearsals for The Devil's Bargain began, and, well, almost immediately, strange things started to happen. The beautifully restored theater seemed to have a mind of its own. Lights would flicker and die in the middle of a scene, plunging the stage into sudden, unnerving darkness. Heavy velvet curtains would sway as if pushed by an unseen hand, even when all the doors and windows were closed. Actors complained of feeling cold spots on the stage, pockets of icy air that would appear and vanish without explanation. Whispers seemed to echo from the empty balconies, and props would go missing from the backstage tables, only to reappear in odd places. At first, the cast and crew tried to laugh it off, They blamed the strange occurrences on the old building's wiring or, the drafts from the air conditioning system. But as the days went on, the incidents became more frequent and honestly more unsettling. A large mirror, one of the theater's original fixtures, shattered without anyone touching it, sending shards of glass raining down onto the stage just moments after an actress had moved away. The sound of faint, sorrowful music was often heard coming from the locked orchestra pit late at night, long after everyone had gone home. The atmosphere in the theater grew heavy with a palpable sense of dread. Heath's behavior began to change. The confident, charming star became withdrawn and obsessive. He spent countless hours alone in the theater, poring over the old script of The Devil's Bargain. He would be seen talking to himself, gesturing at the empty seats as if he were speaking to an invisible audience. He grew pale and thin, with dark circles under his eyes, and he would snap at anyone who questioned his methods or expressed fear about the strange events. It seemed as though the play's dark narrative was consuming him, blurring the line between his role as the haunted artist and his own reality. Some of the actors became so frightened that they quit, forfeiting their paychecks and fleeing the theater. They told stories of seeing a tall, shadowy figure standing in the wings during rehearsals, a figure that would vanish whenever someone looked directly at it. Heath simply hired replacements, dismissing the stories as foolish superstition. He was determined to see the play through to opening night. He felt he was on the verge of creating the greatest performance of his life. He was pushing everyone harder, including himself, unaware that he was not the one in control. The theater and the play had their own script to follow. Opening night arrived on a stormy New Orleans evening. Rain lashed against the windows of the Orpheum Mirrorhouse, and thunder rumbled in the distance, kinda like a drum roll for the tragedy to come. Even with the wild weather outside, the theater was packed. The promise of seeing a famous movie star in a legendary cursed play was just too tempting for people to resist. The air inside was thick with anticipation, this nervous energy buzzing through the crowd. The lights dimmed, a hush fell over the audience, and the heavy crimson curtain rose on the first act of The Devil's Bargain. The performance was electrifying. Heath Maxwell was absolutely mesmerizing in the lead role. He poured every ounce of his being into the character of the tormented artist, his voice filled with a raw and desperate passion that just held the audience captive. All those strange events from rehearsals seemed to have been left behind. The play was proceeding flawlessly. The sets were stunning, the lighting dramatic, and the story unfolded with a chilling intensity. The audience was completely spellbound, watching the artist's rise to fame and the slow, creeping horror of the price he had to pay. What they didn't know was that they were watching something all too real. The play reached its final climactic scene. This was the moment when the artist, having lost everything, confronts the shadowy entity he made his bargain with. He delivers a powerful, heart-wrenching monologue about regret and damnation. As Heath spoke the final lines, his voice shaking with emotion, he clutched his chest. His face went pale, and a look of genuine shock and terror washed over his features. The audience gasped, thinking it was a brilliant piece of acting, maybe the most realistic performance they had ever seen. He was supposed to collapse as the curtain fell, but he collapsed too soon. Heath Maxwell stumbled forward, his eyes wide, and fell to the stage floor with a heavy thud. For a moment, there was just silence. The audience held its breath, waiting for him to rise for his bow. But he didn't move. The other actors on stage rushed to his side, their faces filled with real panic. The curtain came crashing down and screams erupted from the audience as the truth began to dawn. Heath Maxwell, the world-famous actor, had died on stage in the middle of his grand return, during the final scene of a cursed play. The Devil's Bargain had claimed another victim. The theater was immediately sealed off, becoming a crime scene. The official investigation into Heath Maxwell's death was swift and thorough, but honestly, it only deepened the mystery. The coroner's report was inconclusive. It stated that Heath had died of a sudden, massive heart failure, but he had no prior history of heart problems. He was in perfect physical health. There were no signs of foul play, no toxins in his system, nothing at all to explain why a healthy man in the prime of his life would just, drop dead. The official cause of death was listed as natural causes, but no one who was there that night believed it was natural. Detectives searched Heath's lavish dressing room hoping to find some clue, some explanation for the tragedy. Tucked away in a drawer beneath a stack of scripts, they found a small black leather notebook. It was filled with Heath's frantic, spidery handwriting. The entries detailed his growing obsession with the theater and the play. He wrote about the strange occurrences, but he didn't seem scared. Instead, he seemed excited, believing the spirit of the theater was helping him, guiding his performance to new heights. The final entries were the most disturbing. He wrote about making a promise, a pact to ensure the show's success. He wrote, "The theater demands a great performance. I have promised it one. A performance it will never forget." The most chilling piece of evidence came from the theater's own security system. The cameras had been recording throughout the performance, capturing everything from multiple angles. When the investigators reviewed the footage from the final scene, they saw something that made their blood run cold. As Heath delivered his final monologue, a faint, dark shape could be seen standing behind him on the stage. It was a tall, slender shadow, a figure with no discernible features, and it definitely wasn't one of the other actors. It seemed to lean in, as if whispering in Heath's ear, just moments before he clutched his chest and fell. The footage was analyzed by experts who just couldn't explain the anomaly. It wasn't a trick of the light or a glitch in the camera. The shadowy figure was there, a silent observer to Heath's final moments. The notebook and the security footage were never released to the public. The official investigation was closed, but the whispers and rumors only grew louder. The story of Heath Maxwell's death became a modern legend, another dark chapter in the history of the Orpheum Mirrorhouse. The theater was locked up once more, its grand reopening becoming its final tragic closing. In the months and years that followed Heath Maxwell's death, the Orpheum Mirrorhouse sat empty and silent once more, a monument to ambition and tragedy. But it was not at peace. The stories of hauntings, which had been just whispers before, now became shouts. People living in the neighborhood reported seeing lights flickering on and off inside the abandoned building late at night. They claimed to hear the faint sound of a single person clapping, a slow, methodical applause that echoed through the empty streets. Sometimes a mournful voice could be heard, as if an actor were rehearsing his lines to an audience of ghosts. Security guards hired to watch the property would quit after only a few nights on the job. They told terrifying stories of their experiences. One guard reported hearing his name being whispered from the dark stage while he was patrolling the empty auditorium. Another swore he saw a shadowy figure sitting in Heath Maxwell's favorite seat in the front row, a figure that would vanish the moment he shone his flashlight on it. The most common report was the sound of footsteps on the stage, followed by a heavy thud, as if the final, tragic moment of the play were being reenacted over and over again for eternity. The theater became a popular spot for thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts. They would sneak past the fences hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural. Most would leave disappointed and cold, but some came away with stories that would haunt their dreams. They spoke of feeling an overwhelming sense of sadness inside the building, a profound despair that just clung to the velvet seats and dusty curtains. Some even claimed to have seen the apparition of Heath Maxwell himself, a translucent figure wandering the stage, forever trapped in his final role, his face a mask of eternal shock and confusion. The legend of the haunted theater grew, fueled by these new stories. It was said that Heath's spirit was now bound to the place, a permanent part of its ghostly troupe. He had wanted to bring the theater back to life, but instead, he had joined its legion of the dead. He had made a bargain, not with some imaginary devil from a play, but with the theater itself. He had promised it a performance it would never forget, and in return, it had taken him forever. The Orpheum Mirrorhouse was no longer just a cursed building, it was Heath Maxwell's tomb, and his ghost was its star attraction. Fame in the modern world takes many forms. It's not just for movie stars anymore. There are people who become famous by talking into a camera in their bedroom, sharing their lives with the world through the internet. One such person was a video blogger named Leo who ran a popular channel dedicated to investigating paranormal locations. He called his show Ghost Trackers, and he was known for his daring, often reckless attempts to capture proof of the supernatural. When he heard the stories about the Orpheum Mirrorhouse and Heath Maxwell, he knew he had found his next big story. Leo announced to his millions of followers that he was going to spend a night inside the infamous theater and live stream the entire experience. He promised them he would make contact with the spirit of Heath Maxwell. His fans were thrilled, but many locals warned him against it. They told him the theater was not a place to be trifled with, that some things were better left undisturbed. Leo, confident and eager for views, dismissed their warnings as local folklore. He saw the theater as nothing more than a backdrop for his next viral video, a stepping stone to even greater fame. On the anniversary of Heath Maxwell's death, Leo broke into the Orpheum Mirrorhouse, his camera and ghost hunting gear in tow. The live stream began, and his followers watched as he explored the dark, cavernous building. He narrated his every move, his voice echoing in the silent halls. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Then the strange events began. A door slammed shut on its own. Leo's equipment started to malfunction. He captured audio of a faint, whispering voice saying, "Get out!" But Leo wasn't scared. He was excited. This was exactly the kind of content his fans loved. He made his way to the stage, the very spot where Heath had died. He set up his camera and began to call out, taunting the spirits, asking Heath to show himself. Suddenly all his equipment went dead. The live stream feed cut to black. His followers stared at their screens in confusion, then in growing alarm. An hour passed, then two. Leo did not come back online. The police were called and they entered the theater the next morning. They found Leo's camera and all his equipment on the stage, right where he had left them. But Leo was gone. He had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only an empty theater and a silent dark screen. To this day, he has never been found.